Chapter 14. What Gives Me Hope? Although to date there has been no meaningful breakthrough with the Beijing government, what gives me hope is that the relationship between the two peoples, Tibetans and Chinese, has not been irreparably damaged. As more and more ordinary Chinese come to understand the issue of Tibet, they are coming to understand and sympathize with our just struggle. On my part too, I have cherished whatever opportunities I have had to engage with Chinese people, especially those who are from mainland China. For example, through the auspices of the Brookings Institution, I have had a series of dialogues with prominent Chinese scholars who deeply care about the future of China. These conversations, which were quite open and candid, took place in Washington, D.C., at the Aspen Institute, and memorably in Ladakh, India. At one such meeting in Washington, D.C., an important focus of the conversation turned to the issue of moral crisis in light of the aggressive get-rich culture sweeping across China. Personally, I have found these conversations deeply helpful in understanding current China and its challenges and opportunities. I have also had similar dialogues with Chinese scholars in other places like Berlin, Geneva, and Hamburg. Thanks to the noted Chinese intellectual Wang Lixiong, who is married to the amazingly brave Tibetan poet and activist Tshering Wuzhe, in 2010 I also had the rare opportunity to engage in a live Q&A with Chinese from inside China. Announcing this live internet dialogue a few days earlier, Wang had asked for internet users in China to pose questions to me. Web users were then asked to rank these questions according to their preference, and through this democratic process, 8 questions were selected. The questions I was asked, I took to be representative of what many people in China truly wanted to know about and from me. So let me briefly share here this exchange of questions and answers. One question was in relation to my view on the future role of religious leaders in Tibet, and in particular the status of the Dalai Lama and the Panchen Lama. Here I replied that as early as 1969 I had issued a formal statement that the question of whether the Dalai Lama institution should continue or not is for the Tibetan people to decide. I also told them that as soon as Tibet attains genuine autonomy, I would hold no official position in any future Tibetan government. There was a question about how Chinese and Tibetans can nurture and sustain good relations as two peoples. I stressed that if Chinese and Tibetans were to approach one another on the basis of equality and recognition of each other's shared humanity, there would be no barriers for communication. On this basis, many problems could be solved easily. I said that, in my own personal approach, no matter what country I visit, I always emphasize the importance of our common humanity. I said that even when we meet to discuss some difficult problem, it is crucial for the two sides to first connect with each other at the human level. This is the level where we are all exactly the same. Only when this fact is recognized and mutually honored can the parties address the more challenging issues that might have arisen through differences of race, religion, culture, language, or politics. I was then asked why the various meetings between the Tibetans and the Chinese government have always proved to be fruitless. What were the exact questions that had been so intractable over the decades? I said that the main problem was that the Chinese government kept on insisting that there is no such thing as a Tibetan issue, there is only the Dalai Lama problem. But the simple truth is that I have no demands of my own. The issue pertains to the fate of the Tibetan people, their culture, language, religion, and fragile ecology. I said that if and when the day comes that the Chinese leadership is ready to face the Tibet question and work for its solution, I will lend my full support, because our objective is to seek a meaningful place for Tibet and its people within the family of the People's Republic of China. I also said that the Beijing government keeps stressing stability in Tibet, but true stability can come only from trust, which cannot be achieved through force and repression. Personally, I found this live internet dialogue truly memorable. The fact that I could have a live conversation with Chinese brothers and sisters from inside China was almost unbelievable. What I took home from this dialogue was that many thoughtful Chinese who care about the future of their country understand the situation of Tibet and recognize that a lasting solution has to be found that can ensure the survival of the Tibetans as a people. This live exchange with Chinese brothers and sisters gave me hope and reinforced my belief, regardless of the status of our relationship at the governmental and official level, that so long as Tibetans and Chinese avoid the path of mutual hatred, there will always be a basis for finding a genuine understanding between our two peoples. In 2013, during a visit to New York, I had the delightful opportunity to engage with the Chinese artist and activist Ai Weiwei. One question he asked me was if I hoped to return to my native land. Yes, I am hopeful, I said. It is indeed human to miss one's home, even though we Tibetans often say, "Where you are happy, that is your home." I had hoped that I would be able to go back at least once before I die. Now, with my age approaching 90, this is looking increasingly unlikely. During my trips to North America, Europe, Japan, and Australia, Chinese from various backgrounds came to see me. Ordinary Chinese, intellectuals, writers, artists, business leaders, individuals with access to senior Beijing leadership, former government and military officials. I also met with some high-level Tibetan Lamas and Tibetan officials within the Chinese system who had managed to come to see me. So I have had good opportunities to explain to them the need to resolve the issue of Tibet through a path of strict nonviolence and an approach that is mutually beneficial. One of the most moving and emotional meetings with the Chinese I had was that with the wife of the Chinese Nobel laureate Liu Xiaobo. I met Liu Xia during a trip to Sweden in 2018. The instant she saw me, Liu Xia burst into tears. I consoled her and expressed my deep admiration of Liu Xiaobo's courageous efforts for human rights in China, and also her own courage and support of her husband's mission. She said that she wanted to tell me how her husband had a deep respect for me and truly believed that my middle way approach offered a real basis for resolving the long-standing issue of Tibet. She then gave me a copy of a poetry book by her late husband. And on my part, I gave her Chinese translations of 2 of my books. Anyway, this kind of human-to-human contact between Chinese and Tibetans at the personal level should really be nurtured and enhanced. And on the part of the Tibetans, it is crucially important to remember that the Chinese people, too, have suffered under the oppressive rule of the Communist Party. We must also never forget that nations and countries belong to their peoples, not to their governments, no matter how enduring or powerful they might seem at any given time. Governments will come and go, but the peoples will always remain. This is a simple truth. Also, given the large number of Buddhists in China, at the request of relevant organizations, I had the joy of conducting formal teachings in India, specifically for Chinese Buddhists, especially since 2009, when the annual tradition was established to offer teachings for them. Among the attendees were also many monastic members, including some from the monasteries at Mount Wutai Shan. On a few occasions, when individual Chinese from the mainland came to see me privately, some of them would weep in my presence and apologize for the sufferings the Tibetan people had experienced under the communist Chinese rule. And they expressed their deep gratitude that what Beijing had done to the Tibetans had failed in planting seeds of hatred in Tibetans' hearts for the Chinese people. They said that they felt totally at ease when walking around in Dharamsala, where I live, or Bodh Gaya, where thousands of Tibetan Buddhists converge during winter for pilgrimages and Buddhist teachings. During one of my visits to Paris, I had a meeting with a group of Chinese that I shall never forget. One young man, a student from Inner Mongolia, stood up and said that he had an important message for me from his grandfather. He explained that his grandfather had been part of the cavalry in the People's Liberation Army that attacked Tibet in 1950. All these years later, he asked his grandson to apologize to me on his behalf. I was touched by the depth of sincerity with which the grandson conveyed this apology on behalf of his grandfather.